relating to the minimum wage not being effective in reducing poverty. For example, employment may fall more than in proportion to the wage increase, thereby reducing overall earnings. What that means is that by increasing the wage, the minimum wage, it may cause more unemployment that more than offsets the increase in wages. The wages lost through unemployment would be arguably greater. And so that just makes poverty worse. As uncovered sectors of the economy absorb more workers released from the covered sectors, the decrease in wages in the uncovered sectors may exceed the increase in wages in the covered ones. Well, it starts to get very economically kind of complicated here. But again, it goes back, I think, to a principle. And that principle is freedom. And that is that people should be able to sit down and freely decide for themselves how much money they're willing to take as wages and how much they're willing to pay as wages. And let the government just stay out of it. The government is there not to be a player in the economy, but to be a referee. The government is there, you know, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it says the government exists to secure our rights to life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness. In other words, the government exists to protect us from the bad guys, from the criminals, from the people who want to kill us and rape us and steal from us and rip us off.
The government, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. What happens when the government does it? And that's a very interesting point, because there's a very simple test. How do you know that what the government is doing is legitimate and ethical? Ask yourself, if I were to do what the government is doing, would I be committing a crime? And I pointed this out in my testimony in Madison. I said, if I threaten my employer in order to try to get an increase in my wages, if I intimidate him, threaten him with bodily harm, vandalize his car, I go to jail. If the labor union does those things, they get an automatic get out of jail free card. There are laws in the books that protect unions from having to suffer the consequences of that kind of unethical activity. If I do it, I go to jail. If labor unions do it, according to the law, it's okay. Because the way the law is written is, they are in pursuit of legitimate union interests. And this goes back to a really twisted law case. Back in 1973 or 75, there was a case where the way the law was written, it said that labor unions are not allowed to use wrongful violence as a coercive effort to gain, you know, whatever it is they were trying to achieve. The court looked at this terminology, and here's the twisted logic they used. They said, it refers here to wrongful violence. Well, if there is wrongful violence, then that must imply that there is violence that's not wrongful. And so, what can we think of that would be an example of violence that's not wrongful? Well, it must be like violence that is used in pursuit of legitimate union interests, like higher wages, better working conditions. And so they're allowed to engage literally in violence and get away with it. I can't do that. Now apply that to the government. Let's say I take money from you, steal money from you. I'm arrested. I go to the court. The judge says, "How do you plead?" I say, "Not guilty." The judge goes, "What do you mean? You were caught red-handed. There's witnesses. How do you justify pleading not guilty?" Well, because, Judge, I used it to pay my medical bills. would you expect the judge to go, case dismissed? I don't think so. I think you'd expect the judge to say, it doesn't matter what you do with the money, Mr. Farmer. It wasn't your money in the first place. But if the government takes your money and pays my medical bills, all of a sudden people are going, let's have more of that. The two situations are morally identical. The only question is, who's stealing your money? The two situations are exactly equivalent. I'm stealing your money to pay my medical bills. The government is stealing your money to pay my medical bills. If I do it, it's a crime. If the government is doing it, it's not a crime. It's just like what Richard Nixon said. Well, if the government's doing it, it's not a crime. We thought he was nuts. And here we are. And we're embracing all these government policies that rely on exactly that concept. Most of what the government, the federal government, spends its money on is not only not authorized in the Constitution, it's a crime. It's unethical. It's immoral. It's taken money from people who've earned it and given it away to people who haven't earned it. I mean, if that's not the definition of theft, then what is? But here we are. So I'll leave you with maybe two final thoughts. One is a quote that I think pretty well sums up. What should a worker be paid? What is the best wage? Now, how should we determine whatever? The best wage rates for labor are not the highest wage rates, but the wage rates that permit full production, full employment, and the largest sustained payrolls. The best profits from the standpoint not only of industry but of labor are not the lowest profits, but the profits that encourage most people to become employers or to provide more employment than before. And the final thought is this: the best solution to any economic problem is the most ethical one. You know, I mean, it's, you know, at the risk of sounding kind of hokey, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus advocate stealing from you to pay my medical bills? I don't think so. I don't think Jesus said the seventh commandment should be ignored if you want to help the poor. No. Christian charity is supposed to be voluntary, not coerced. And so, as I said to him in Madison, I said, can you think of any problem in which the most ethical solution is not the best solution? What is ethical about allowing labor unions to be able to use coercion to get what they want? I don't see anything ethical about it. Take the coercion out of the picture and let freedom ring. Thank you. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to hang around for as long as you want.